Okay, Tommy the Rash, Air and Air. So we're back again. I'm after splitting last night's video into two, so this is going to be the second part of that video. It was a bit too long to upload in one. So yeah, we're just going to continue and take it from where last night's video ended. So there's two things done here. I've got one nut on there, and if you look up under here, you'll see the little square that I've cleaned him back with the Dremel. So he's going to make a nice earth there. And then this lad here is cleaned around the washer there and all. So when I tighten that in, that should also make a good earth. So I have the work lamp behind the phone here. I'm just going to lift it up a little bit, and hopefully the work lamp won't cause that rippling it sometimes does. No, so you know what it looks like. Okay, so we just want to get that tightened up. It's a head nut, and I find they're very good casting, and they're very hard and all of that, and they're just really good metal, and they've never been exposed to the elements in most cases, so they're ideal for the job that we're looking to do here. So see if it tightens up. Oh, have to get a bit better of a twist on it first. The treads on that are not great. See, get that wire out of the way there if we can. On top of it even. Because this tray seems to just be, the battery tray seems to just be wedged on. So the owner will probably want to change it to the proper one at some point, but we're going to need to have at least, you know, one nut in it for earth. Get our earth connection, and I want to get the earth connection where it's meant to be got, and that's from the battery tray. Our earth lead isn't too far from where this nut is as well, so it should all help. Treads are fairly hard on it now, in fairness. I'm just going to go and get a bar for that, and I'll come back to it. Okay, there's a bit of a bar on it there. Need a bit of leverage, because I think them treads are fairly rusty. And they're fine threads, so there's a bit of spin on them. That should be good enough to make an earth now. Yeah, that's going to be 100%. And we can go and do the same on the other side, and even just put one in the middle there as well, just to have it all right. And I can put on an actual head, cylinder head washer as well. It's just, they're nice and neat. These are basically like a head stud in it because they're the same thread. But this is something I can do myself. So let's see, I might have to put an extension on. That is something I'll do later on. Main thing is that it's on, and we can tighten that up later on. We don't need to be looking at watching me do that now. So we can move around the other side now, because we have the little earth wire made up. So we'll bring kit and caboodle around here. So the earth wire is just a simple black wire there. I just went for a heavier gauge, because I suppose the earth is probably the most important connection here. So we'll set the camera down here. Okay. have a look then at what we can do with connecting that up. So we've cleaned behind the battery tray with the Dremel. So we've just made a simple little ringlet and spade collector. So D, E. So E goes on there. Nice and tight. This will all be coming off again for closing all this up. I want to make sure that it's working. There's no point in me closing this all up if it's not working. I might have to take it all back apart again. So I'm just going. I won't have to take off this particular connection anyway. But nor will I have to take off those. To be honest, I can take them off down to dynamo. So we can give this a good squeeze on there. And that is going to run through our nut, our bolt. That's why I picked this one here, so it goes through. And I left the wire just a little bit longer so that when we put the nut and washer behind it, it'll pinch that up against where we've cleaned and you have a very good connection. So that's why I leave them a little bit longer. So the next connection is A, and that's a big one. And if I'm not mistaken, that is going to, that's your charge. We don't have an ammeter. That A stands for ammeter. We do have one in the 20 diesel on the dash. We don't have it on any of the petrol or TVO models of the Ferguson 20 or 35. So what I'm going to do for the fun of it is we're going to go over to my own gold belly. I have a feeling that goes to the positive connection on the solenoid. So this tractor doesn't have a solenoid as of yet, so it's on the shopping list. Okay, so yeah, it does. Yeah, you can see the wire coming up in the back there. So that's going to the positive battery lead. So that's your charge feeding into, yeah, you can see one wire going up there. So that needs to be fed back to the positive. So for the time being, I can get away with making up a wire from there to the positive battery lead until we get a solenoid. So I can just quickly throw something together that'll do that, just for testing purposes. And then we need to get a wire up to our key ignition. That's going to need to be fed with positive. One click is going to be going to our ignition coil. It's going to be basically replacing this wire here, which isn't going to be long enough, which is fine. It was only for testing purposes. So we can make up one of them to the key ignition. That'll be a nice job. And we have to make another one to the charge light over there. So there are a few things that I can be doing. So I can make a little scrap of wire from here to the positive and the battery lead. And I can then fit the key ignition switch and then cut a wire long enough to go down to the coil. But there's a bit of original Ferguson 20 wire and loom actually coming from a dynamo, so we're going to use that up to the positive on the battery temporarily until we get a solenoid. Simple as that. So we have our earth here now as well. It has to be wired, has to be connected up onto the battery tray through the bolt that we picked on the far side. So it's probably going to be a little bit awkward. Lining up everything. Oh, we have to slide this. Into the back here. So we'll have to loosen off all of this here first. Slide him up and on. There we go. Then we have to push our bolt through. Give it a push with the screwdriver. Get as much trans through as possible. Okay, we need to get our connection on. It's a matter of feeling first. There we go. And we need to get our nut onto the back there as well. I'm actually going to go and get a washer now, because tightening that with a nut is not ideal. It's only turn it. So get a washer and come back. Okay, so I made a little mistake. I had to add in another wire for the ignition light. I'm used to wiring up 20 diesels, the diesel engines, not the petrol. So I just took a T off this, so I had to put on a new connector there. So what? Doesn't make a difference, grand. And it's actually better having two wires going into that anyway, because it's such a thick connector. So this is going to make its way up to the ignition light. So this is the D connection. So on the original loom, they send two wires back from the dynamo, but there's no real need to be sending them back the whole way from the dynamo when they're connected into the D on the voltage regulator box. So I'm taking mine from the voltage regulator box, and that way I don't have a very, very thick wire running along the side of the engine, thicker at least than it needs to be. So this now is going to be giving our earth to the ignition switch. So when we turn on the earth to the charge light. So when we turn on our ignition switch, it's going to send positive power to one side of the charge light, and it's going to get its earth from D, because the dynamo's not turning and it's connected to earth. It's going to come through this until the dynamo starts turning. When it starts turning, it produces positive power. The light has already been powered with positive power, so it's getting too positive, so that the bulb goes out basically. So that is what we needed to do there. So I just had to look at my own one and figure out what was going on. So I think that can come up through there, and it can go across. Come up through there and go across towards our ignition light or charge light. Serves as both. So that's a better job, I think, than sending one the whole way back from the dynamo. So I'll show you on my own one, just so you can see. I'm just so used to 20 diesels that only have, you know, D and F, but on the petrol ones you can see very clearly there's two wires coming from the D, the bigger connection on the bottom there, and one of them is yellow, and you can see it here going to your charge light. The white wire there is positive power from the switch, and that's the same color that's going to your coil. You can see it there, that white wire. So you turn your switch, the ignition, onto the first click, it lights up your light and it sends power to the coil. That's why it's an ignition and charge light. So I'm just going to clear a little bit of space here so we can get in here and have a look at this ignition light and see how long this wire needs to be. So there's our charge light here. Take that out. So we've routed our wire the same as what on my own one, up through here. So we just need it to be roughly about that long there, so it would help if it had a snips. We've got none here. In fact, I'm going to go and get the crimps and actually going to do that all here. The major electrical component that's missing here is the solenoid, because that acts as your positive power for your switch and for your charging, I think, as well. Yeah, so I'm right in saying that A goes to the, or does it go to the charge light? Maybe, yeah. Yes, the D goes to the charge. I'm confusing myself. I'm so used to the Ferguson FE35 where A goes to the ammeter. You know that would be on the dash. So let's pull this wire a little bit without having it tight, so it can be cable tied safely out of the way. And I think about there it's going to give us enough length that we'll be able to work with it. Okay, there's no need for heat shrinking around these. Insulated is perfect. So a little twist and a little hoop Should do this trick. Should do the trick. If it's too wide, just take the hoop out of again, tighten it up a bit more. I do like to hoop them if I can. It does depend on the gauge of wire, of course. So sometimes you just have to kind of hope that you'll get it in. If it's really, oh, there we go, that's perfect, right up to the end. Beautiful. I like to have them nice and snug. The pull test. That's after passing the pull test. Okay, so now we have our wire, so we can go to any one of these. This is completely plastic, so it's completely insulated, so it doesn't matter which one you go to. Bend it out of the way slightly so you can get its power then from the switch. So we can leave that hanging out there, and then we can move around to the other side and see what we're going to do. We are really missing this solenoid because we have to kind of make a bit of a bodge job in the meantime until it comes, or until it's ordered or whatever, but we can get a few bits and pieces done in the meantime. So first thing we can do is we can take off the connections to the coil, because that's going to be fed from the ignition switch, all going well. This is a lovely original wire, and I can tell you one thing, whatever that stuff is on them there, you try and bare that wire with a pliers, I can tell you one thing, it's like plastic, it's like it's baked onto it. It's not really rubbery at all, it's very, very, very hard. And the brass connections they have on them are savage. The ringlets and all of that. I think most of it, I think all of them, there was no spay connectors on these tractors. That's after just widening a bit. I tightened it, and again you're probably talking imperial versus metric. So it's just a little bit snug. Really snug. Come up off it. Yeah, no spay connectors at all on these. Everything was either bolt on ringlet or the bullet connectors in the voltage regulator. Okay, so seriously strong wire, seriously heavy gauge as well. They were not afraid of putting the material in, so we can make up a nice wire now for there. I go black to our ignition switch. So for this I like a nice heavy gauge wire. End of the day, this is your ignition. So I have a bit of heat shrink on here. I have the right ringlet here that will fit snugly without being too loose or anything like that. So I'm just going to see if I can loop it. If I can, well and good. A good twist anyway, because it's going to be touch and go. But this is a good strong wire. There's not as much strands in it, and they're stronger. Good thick strands. So if we get that in there, we can. That's good. Crimp it. I took off the insulator off it to look a bit neater without it. It'll look nicer with the heat shrink. So another little crimp, fairly important connection now. So that's past the pull test. Put on our heat shrink. That is nice and neat and strong. So that's going to be going down to our coil from our ignition switch. So that will go down there. And the washer can actually come up if we're able to get it up. Okay. That's good. Give that a quick little nip down. Just have a feel of it along the way. That's going to be perfect. Lovely and neat. Can't see any. What I like about it is you can't actually really see any connections as such as, you know, the big blue plastic things around like that. So I way prefer that look than when you can see a wire like that. I don't like them when it's hidden, like in behind the dash there onto that charge light that you can see there. I do not mind leaving the blue little lads on that. That's perfect. At the end of the day, they're just insulated. They're doing their job. So we can just go and, I suppose, route the wire in behind the voltage regulator. If you want to be fussy, what you can do, it doesn't have to be done now, but sure, I might just show it, just since we have it here, is pull it up, use the bracket to tidy it, so run it up under the bracket, pull it up through. This is what you can do down the road. We will have this off again, I'm sure, for tidying up and all of that. But if you wanted to do it, of course, the wire is in an absolute nutter. Not. But you get the drift. Something like that will just tidy it up a little bit. If you wanted to run it in behind there, you could very easily do that. And I'm going to do it again now that I have the knot out, just so we can get the right measurements. Or in this case, it's actually probably better and safer probably just to run it in through here, since we have it there. Something like that. Put it in underneath that tray there. Not that and pull it too tight. And then we're only going to the key ignition there, so we can cut it then wherever we need. So we'll put our key ignition in rough. This one there. And we'll take our measurement. Okay, we can cut it there. That should do the trick. Again, it's probably a bit too long, but there'll be plenty of time for tidying this all up down the road. I do not want connections too tight, that is for sure. Okay, so now we have to start figuring out on the key switch here. We have number 1. So we have to figure, is that power in or what? But I have, this is that key switch fitted to my own one, so all I have to do is basically look at that and decipher it. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to figure out then, do we need a big chunky connection like that, or do we need a small one for the power out to the coil? We're able to make sense of this now. Do we have it off? So we have one is this brown wire here, and that is coming from the back connection in there, from the basically same connection as the positive battery lead. 2 then is the 2 white wires, coil and ignition light. And then this last one here is the number 3 is the start. We don't have 4. This could have been a heater plug and that had been start, but I don't have a heater plug on. This is not diesel. So what we need to do then is fit small spade connector onto our wire here. We can drop down the camera a bit, and the same is going to go on the wire going to the charge light. So that means we'll be able to get 2 more bits wired up. Fairly handy. So this is our coil. I might struggle to go in there. The hoop is just a little bit too wide. I know I got it already before, so I'll get it again. And when I do, it's a lovely, lovely snug fit. Like so. It's a lovely feeling when it's just the right width. Onto the blue. This is going to be hidden, so we don't need to be using heat shrink or anything like that. Give it a tug test. Okay, and so we have 2 connections here on number 2 pole. So that's going to be going in there. So we'll use the inside one for this and the outside one for the ignition light. So that is good. So now we can pick up our wire. That happens to be tied around the hammer stand, so if I pick that, the whole show will end up on the ground. So now we need to figure out what length of wire we need from this ignition switch to the charge light, and then we can cut the wire, put the connections on both sides, both ends, and we will have another job done. So I can quickly just put that nut on there just to hold it in place. If it wants to go on. Oh. Okay, turn it the way we want. Actually, what we have to do is make sure we have it in 1 click ignition, start. There is 2 clicks, but we're not using the second one because we don't have a heater plug. So that is basically the way we're going to want to look at it. Straight down for off. That's straight down, so tighten it up there. 1 click. So we look inside then and we see, it gives us a better idea for length of wire we need. But what we can do is we can go ahead and put 1 spade connector on. Do that. And then we can measure. That hoop is probably a little bit wide on the end. And I like to just feel it go up to the top. There we are, that's the push. Kind of just wedges into the top. There we go, 1 there and 1 for the keeping the wire in. Pull test, and that is a pass. Okay, so now we have to get our hand in under here, because there's no oil pressure gauge. We can see what we're doing, and we have our wire here, and then we just have to measure roughly over. So I'm just going to quickly go over the other side. I'll leave us all there, and we'll cut it then where it needs to be. We'll leave it plenty because there's loads of throttle. There's going to be lots of throttle connections in there, so I don't mind it being long, so we can cable tie everything out of the way. We'll pull the wire through fully. Okay. I'm just going to pull it out through the hole here and make sure that if we want to cable tie things, that we're going to have enough room there to cable tie out of the way. So that is basically where we are at now, and then we can bear it. I'm just going to go and quickly get another spade connector and we'll get that on. That'll be another thing done. Okay, same with this. pull test. Good. Now we can hitch up the other side here. Okay, they're both insulated. They're both good. So we'll take them off, because I have to just put the nut on it. So that's okay. That's the beauty of spade connectors. Or I suppose it would make sense if we put the nut on the right side of the dash. Emitter light, ammeter connections, doesn't matter what side because it's all plastic, there's no, I mean, there's metal and it was getting the earth from the dash, you'd want to make sure you're putting the earth on the earth and the positive on the positive. Okay, on with the nut. And the nut likes to go on first. Off with the connections. In with the light. On with the nut. Tighten her up. Back on the connections. One. And two is on the way. So they're good. Pull them out of the way. There's no point in me showing you this because it's just fairly pokey in there. But I can show you. Yeah. You can just probably see them. There's plenty there. They'll all be cable tied out of the way. You can even use, like, so when there's a nut and a bolt put through there, you can get little loopy lads to go around that and it'll keep it all out of the way. There's plenty of wire, that's the main thing. So we have our coil. Do we have our coil wired in? We have our ignition light wired in from the dynamo to the switch as well. So that's good. So we need our solenoid next because we don't have it, but that'll be ideal. So we need power in from the battery as well, and that comes from the solenoid too. So that's the reason why we need a solenoid. We need power coming from the solenoid to 1, and then 3 needs to go back to the tab on the solenoid that gets it to actually work as a switch. So until then, I could take the one off my own if I wanted, but we'll see about getting a solenoid. But for tonight, I think that's probably all I'm going to do. There's a few tidy up jobs I can do. We can fit another nut on there and a washer, bolt that up. We have the other one on the inside there, you can just see it there. I have to tighten that up. Then down the road, of course, we can look at maybe fitting a bolt into that as well, tidy it up, and a washer, that kind of thing. And then when the solenoid comes, then to figure out where we'll fit it. We could actually drill this. There's nothing in behind there. We could drill it, put it in there, be nice and neat. Keep it all below this, in out of the way, and we've plenty of length in our battery lead there to go with whatever way we want. We could try and work that it's nice and neat, even if it involves putting it in behind and pulling it out like so, and it'll be something like that. It'll be nice and neat. But regardless, we're making headway. It was a little bit different than the 20 diesel. That's why I had to backtrack and take another T off the D connection there up to the charge light, because of course your 20 diesel doesn't have a charge light. It just has ammeter, and that's simply A from the regulator box, whereas A on this a little bit different. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight, and we'll come back then and we'll try and do another bit on it then tomorrow night. Okay.